kids who ran away. What's your story? Serious. Had to have been about 5 or so. I remember getting mad at my mum. She wouldn't bake the store-bought cookie dough we got from the store earlier. I literally went out to find a stick, got a large handkerchief to throw my stuff in, and tied it like they did in old cartoons. Made it out about a mile until my dad found me. I'm 6. My sister is 4. We decide it seems like a lot more fun to live at my neighbor's house. We tell said neighbor we're living here and never going home. She calls my mother. We wait with anticipation, giggly, excitable. Then we hear a knock at the door. My mother stands in the doorway with all our clothes packed into suitcases. Even has a little teddy head sticking out the top for good measure. She says while she respects our decision and will miss us very much, unfortunately we are never welcome on their side of the fence again. But the very best of luck to us and our new leaves. She puts down the suitcases in the hall and closes the door. We made it back before she did. I don't recall exactly what caused it beyond getting absolutely fed up with my dad's controlling bullshit, and I just packed a small bag, went out the back door and jumped on the first train in the direction of one of my school friends. 4 hours away. Texted my mum the bare details from the train and stayed with my friend for like a week or something. Dad didn't even realize I'd gone until several hours afterwards and just asked mom. He didn't even try to contact me the entire time. I had almost run away when I was about 8 or 9. My cousin was an abusive jerk back then and leeched off my mom. He physically and mentally abused us so much that I can't listen to someone slightly raising their voice without tearing up. At that time, they were having a screaming match, and I had recently got a knife collection. I sat in the locked room and was stabbing the wall with hatred. I ran out of the basement where our room was and ran over to my nice neighbor's house. I went to the back door, knocked and waited. When she answered I was so happy because I just wanted to stop hearing the screaming. My cousin is now a father and visits often and is kind and well-tempered. His wife cheated on him and he now has to pay CS. I still suspect he killed my cat as some vendetta against my brother who owned it and was a pedo. When I was 2, I packed my backpack full of toys and started walking down the road to make it seem like I was running away. I planned on my mum running after me begging me not to go, but she sat and watched me walk away. I was running away because she didn't get pepperoni on the pizza. I came back. I was 2. I didn't really intentionally run away, but I really liked the woods. So I'd just kind of lose track of time and my parents would freak out. Understandably so, though it didn't seem like a huge deal to me at the time. Usually I'd return, but a couple times I just got sleepy, so I'd go to bed in a little lean-to with a nice grass bed. I got in trouble. I ran away from my Amish community when I was 16. People don't realize how bad the Amish community really is. It's basically a cult. Ask me anything. Stepmoms, or at least mine, sucked ass. Was at the rebellious teen stage and fighting her every step. The rules were overbearing and the punishments for violating them were worse. We're talking no admittance to the house, no door on bedroom, etc. Anyway, during a particularly bad batch, she was making me conjugate all of the verbs in French, so I finally snapped and screamed, "All you are is my dad Shrek's toy." So, she screamed back, "Get the frick out and go live with the bums downtown." I ended up at a kids' shelter and bounced in and out of the runaway shelters 4 years afterward. Mother had just died. Prior to her death, I had been in foster care. Had been home a month before she died. Was put in the care of a very mentally ill relative who beat me constantly. Knew I didn't want to go back to foster care, so I packed my backpack and left while my relative was at work. Then, proceeded to live like I was on the run from the cops, because essentially, I was. When I was picked up, they took me back to my abusive relative. Then I ran again. I was 19 and my dad had just physically attacked me. Usually my mother was the problem, but on this day my dad had flipped out over something. Can't even remember what it was. Grabbed me and thrown me on the ground and over the counter screaming at me. I'd had enough of their bullshit and immediately packed up a bag and drove my motorbike to a friend's mum's house who knew about my shooty home life and had previously offered her home as a safe place for me to stay if I needed to. This woman literally saved my life and I'm indebted to her forever. We don't talk anymore, but I think about her a lot. I ended up staying there for 3 months paying $50 a fortnight in rent while getting my life in order, applying for government benefits, trying to get a job, because my family didn't allow me to have a job, and trying to attend uni at the same time. Ended up renting my own apartment and getting a well-paying career, finishing my degree, with great difficulty, and now I barely talk to my awful family at all. Broke an expensive marble table so I ran away. My brother apparently got my parents calmed down enough for me to come home essentially, because given my youth at the time mum and dad kinda blamed him for not keeping a better eye on me. I was about 7. In an effort to up-level my reading, my mum brought home a whole series of books about Buffalo Bill, Crazy Horse, etc. I got mad that they weren't picture books and so, she said, "Fine, I'll take them away." Then I got really mad, called her a bitch, locked the latch to our rec room and ran out the back, with no shoes, in the rain. I came back after an hour dripping wet. She dried me off and put me to bed. I think my dad gave me a stern lecture when he got home, but that was about it for consequences. Those books were awesome by the way. 6 years old. Didn't want to go to gymnastics class. Hated flipping upside down. It scared me every time. A janitor found me an hour later, napping in the pew of our church, and returned me to my mother. My mother then called the police and thanked them and called off the search. This is serious, it really happened, and I apologize in advance if anyone's offended if that it's not in keeping with the tone of other replies. Less running away, more being kicked out that turned into running away, kind of. I was about 8 years old. My mum was angry at me, as she often was. I had a pretty rough childhood oof, and so, she told me to pack some things and get out. I had a little Barbie backpack type thing with some clothes and a few snacks and she just pushed me out the door and locked me outside. I started walking and kept walking for a while. I planned on going to a park a few miles away that I knew well, because I figured I could get away with sleeping there since there was shelter. I remember being scared that it would rain, because I didn't have a jacket and I'd get cold very easily. I ended up circling back around to home and trying to get inside, and eventually she let me in after a few hours when she was heading off to work. I kept a bag packed just in case for a long time afterwards so that if that happened again, I'd have more of what I needed this time. I planned on never coming back that next time. I grew up without a father and my mother was too interested in hooking a man to support her to pay me much mind. I hated my household environment so I decided to just leave when I was 14. Couch surfed for a few weeks in friends' basements and garages. It was the 90s. I find parents hardly gave a shoot compared to now. Eventually I was arrested by the cops. My mum reported me as a runaway. I kept getting arrested for weed and general miscreant activity at this point, because the cops were on the lookout for me. Eventually I was sent to juvenile prison. I graduated high school from juvie when I was 16, was released, and lived at my mother's house for about a month before I found my own apartment and moved out. Let's just say that having your own apartment at 16 makes you a pretty popular kid with other kids that want to skip school, smoke pot, and play video games. I was 17 with a rocky relationship with my family, moody teenage girl ready to leave home, and I was getting tired of my sisters stealing all of my belongings. I ended up running away for 2 weeks, only went home once to grab some of my things. My parents never contacted the police or anything even though they threatened to multiple times. I stayed with friends during this time so I didn't have to sleep in my car. Although I was practically living out of it, I was still attending school and practices for sports, just refusing to go home. One night I got way too high, had an ego death, and got a text from my dad saying my grandpa had died. That's what made me go back home. I still feel bad about putting my parents through that to this day. They really do care about me and love me. I was just too stubborn to see it. I ran away because me and my dad had an argument when I was like 13 and it was late and cold and some dude in a truck stopped and picked me up. I was a stupid kid, and at one point when I got out to use the restroom he checked my backpack and found the address of my house on my laptop case and drove me home. It was quite the experience. I told my dad about me being raped and it was told to the family as a joke. I was tired of abuse and actually escaped my mother's to avoid her ex-husband from hurting me, just to be hurt by someone on my dad's side. I didn't expect to live this long, because I didn't care about myself anymore. But here I am at 25, 2 kids, one in heaven at school to be a nurse smiley face. Not my story, but the story of my best friend in high school. This was in the 10th grade. We met at the school's orientation, and were pretty much best friends from that moment on. She lived with her dad, who was abusive in every way. The thing that finally made her run away was him grabbing her by the throat, pushing her against a wall, and saying, "I want to fricking kill you right now." I don't know exactly how it played out from there, but shortly afterwards she arrived at my door. She lived with my dad and I for a few months. Attempted suicide over the Christmas break, right around New Year's. I remember hearing her throwing up after taking pretty much every pill she could find in my bathroom. I remember laying in my bed with her and holding her, because that's what she asked for and I didn't know what else to do. Eventually, an ambulance came and took her to the hospital, and my dad and I followed close behind. I stayed with her as much as I could. It's now been circa 4 years since that all happened. We've fallen out since then, but last I heard she's doing much better. I miss her all the time.